Oh, hi there. Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Talk. I'm John Barry, and today we're going to be doing a review for Star Wars Thrawn Treason. Now, the first part of the review will be spoiler-free, but we are going to be talking about spoilers a little later on in the video, but I'll let you know when we get to that part specifically. So, my overall thoughts. I enjoyed the book. I know some people, they were kind of disappointed with the book. I think a big reason for that is because if you've watched Star Wars Rebels, you know what happens to Thrawn next. You don't know what happens to Thrawn after Rebels, but because this takes place before the last episode 2 of Rebels, so we know what happens to Thrawn. But I didn't mind that so much. I was more interested in the side characters rather than what happens to Thrawn himself. And except for one side character, none of them get mentioned by name in Star Wars Rebels. Some of them we might see at some point in Star Wars Rebels, but none of them are mentioned by name. So I actually, as you may have been able to glean a little bit about how I was saying I wasn't disappointed, I enjoyed the book. Now, I did know in advance that's what some people's disappointments were in the book. And maybe that kind of helped me because I was expecting that then. Kind of was expecting to know what happened to Thrawn anyhow. So I think I was able to put myself into the mindset of focusing on the other characters besides Thrawn, which I think is the main reason why I enjoyed the book. I won't get too much more into the other characters, but I will say we do have two returning characters from Star Wars Thrawn. So the first Thrawn book. So this was in the epilogue was the last time we saw these two characters. First time we saw one of them. But regardless, and there are actually some neat little callbacks to the first Thrawn book, and not as many to the second one, but a few. I don't think I picked them out as well, but yes, they were callbacks, and all of this is connecting together, and does make me excited for where the story is going to go. At this point, I think it's going to be safe to say that if you don't want to be spoiled for the actual plot, I suggest you pause the video, save it to your watch later playlist, and go read the book and come back once you've read it, because I will be spoiling the book. So I think I've warned you sufficiently, and before you go, if you enjoyed what you've seen so far, and if you find yourself enjoying the video at any time, please leave a like, and follow me on the socials. Links for my socials are in the description. And also, before I go too much farther into my review, because I don't really want to color your guys' opinion, what did you think of Star Wars Thrawn Treason? So, pause the video and go put your thoughts down in the comments right now. I'll give you a second or two, because I want to hear your thoughts where they've not been tainted by my opinion. Now that that's out of the way, let's actually get into it. Now, there's a good number of places to start, but I think I'm going to start with Eli Mantle. If you don't remember, he was Thrawn's aide/translator during the first book. Essentially, he also helped Thrawn shift through a lot of data, because it seemed like Thrawn not only recognized that he was good at shifting through data, perhaps maybe better than Thrawn. And not so much picking up on information, but doing the actual shifting through part. That's what I've kind of gathered. And then of course now Commodore Fail is doing a lot of that work that Eli used to do, though she's not as proficient or as good as Eli was. And also, I felt, at the start of the book, I felt like Commander Fail was in a similar position to Eli that Eli experienced throughout most of the first book, where he was constantly being held back by Imperial High Command because Thrawn was an alien, but because Thrawn was a favorite of Palpatine, they couldn't do anything to stop Thrawn's advancement, so they did for Eli. I thought Commodore Fail was going to have the same kind of thing, where, no, she was promoted to Commodore and therefore should have gotten command of a task force, but it hadn't come through yet. And so I thought initially that, maybe it's somebody's holding her back because they can't do anything to Thrawn. Turned out not to be the case, which we find out at the end of the book. It's because Thrawn recommended that she be dropped for consideration for command of one task group and be considered for command of a fleet, which is high up in the Imperial hierarchy, because he felt that was a better use of her talents. Which I thought was kind of neat. Granted, she did not know that at the time, but that was, I think, kind of a neat way of doing that, kind of subverting expectations, and in a good way. It kind of shows what we've always known about Thrawn. He looks for talent and he rewards talent. There's actually one part of the book where he was doing a new maneuver called the slingshot. Other creators have done videos where they've broken it down more technically, but basically what it is the tractor beam of the Star Destroyer is used to fling an object more or less farther on, so to give it more momentum than it would otherwise. So basically what the way it was used the most was the ties would be launched, but they'd be launch running science, so only basic life support, basic communication, and maybe basic thrusters, but even then that may not be the case. And the tractor beam is used to essentially guide them onto a new trajectory that will send them to a place whether they can do passive scans or just get into position for a battle ahead of time without being detected by the enemy. Quite ingenious. And the first time they tried it, they had 5 tractor beams operating. 3 were done by the Class A tractor beam operators, which is not stated overtly, but I pretty much figure it's the top tractor beam operators, the best ones. And so 2 of the top ones were given the assignment, and afterwards Thrawn asked for their names and recommended one be given additional training and the other to be given the test to become a Class A operator. He's evaluating those under his command and deciding, how to improve their skills. One, he saw more training was needed. The other he saw could deserve and could probably get the higher position, the higher classification. Which is kind of neat to see, because let's take Vader for example. The operator who probably needed more training, yeah, I think their neck would be feeling a little sore. Granted, would Vader actually pay attention to a single tractor beam operator? Not necessarily, but the point still stands. Thrawn uses those under his command to their full capabilities, and he, finds the strengths and weaknesses and finds ways to elevate them pretty much despite strengths, or to train them to overcome, or despite weaknesses, not strengths, and train them to overcome those weaknesses. Sometimes it's just more training, so those weaknesses are no longer weaknesses, and sometimes it's teaching them how to avoid them. We don't get too much of that, but I think it's there and something Thrawn definitely would do. But let's go back to Eli Mantle. I know I've kind of gotten off track from that, but so we learn more about what Eli has been up to, where he's been. We knew from the end of the first Thrawn book that he went by Thrawn's request to join the Chiss Ascendancy and help them out somehow. We learn what he's doing. At first, us, like Eli, is kept in the dark on what Eli's specific task is, and because he's at the end of the first book, Eli was promoted to commander. In the Chiss, he was demoted to lieutenant. Though that does make me wonder, what was Thrawn's rank before he joined the Empire? Was he, an admiral? Or was he something like, a lieutenant, a captain, an ensign, a regular grunt? I don't know. Though given Thrawn's tactical genius, he probably was up there, or at least upper level command, like commander, captain, mid-commander. The Chiss has some different ranks than the Empire does, which I thought was kind of nice to see show some differences too. But, so, Eli's among the Chiss. He's learning the Chiss language, even though most of them can speak the trade language, Sai-Bisti, I believe it's called. Most of them can speak it, but he's learning the Chiss language, which I forget. I can picture it, the name, the letters. I can't recall the letters or say them, and I think I would mispronounce them anyhow. But the Chiss language, he's learning to speak it, which is, probably good. I think he has a knack for languages too, for some reason. But, yeah, he's learning languages, or learning a language, and he's shifting through a lot of data, which he doesn't know what it's for. he finds out later on, same do we. But I'm not quite there yet to talk about that. I want to talk about Chiss names. So when Eli joined the Chiss, his name was essentially not changed, but given Chiss pronunciation, because Chiss names has 3 parts. So Thrawn's Chiss name is Misra Nu Rado. Misra Nu Rado. That's the separation, I believe, if I'm correct. I probably could, actually I know it's in here somewhere. Actually, I probably could look in this book too, Heir to the Empire, because that's where he began his time, but yes. Yes, it's right here, nice and easy in the epilogue. Palpatine saying it, so I'm not going to try Palpatine's voice. Even though it would be kind of neat if I could, but I can't. So it's Miss Ra Nuradu. That's Thrawn's Chiss name. And his code name is Thrawn. So it takes the middle part of their name, part of the first part, and part of the last part to form their core name. So, what happened to Eli then? Well, as you can see, his name is Eli Mantle. Though the Chiss turned into their style is Eli Van To, or should I say Eli Van 2, because that's probably more how we would pronounce it given the way it's written. So, some of the Chiss, even though they were told by Admiral Aralani that he should either be called, because he comes from a different culture who has different name factors, he should be called, by his, should be called either Eli Vanto, his full name, or should be called Eli or just Vanto, like that. But a lot of them don't, and they call him, I didn't write this down unfortunately, and I actually did bookmark that. So that he should be dressed as, Lieutenant Vanto or Lieutenant Eli Vanto, or Eli Van2 I should say, because that's how it looks. Though some had taken to making a core name out of it, and it stuck on him, and I want to make sure I have this correct. So Eli's equivalent of a Chiss core name would be Evant. So it's taking the last letter of Eli, the Van, and then the first letter of To. So, Evant. And that's very similar to how Thrawn, because Ra, and then TH, and then put an N at the end. Thrawn, and that's all in his name. Granted, that's how it works in, basically basic/English. I don't know how well that would work out, but this is what I figured out how it works. The names are not translated into our language. Basically, our out-of-universe language. Their names are literally their in-universe names, no alterations. That's how I figure out, and then that way when we do translations, we're just doing phonetic translations rather than any other kind of translations, which then makes it work, at least for English. And actually in any language, you could be making what's the word I'm looking for, any kind of phonetic translation, and then things will still be coming out the same for names. But I think that will only work for names. But also in this section talks about Chiss names and what each 3 parts represent. So the first part identifies the family name. And the second part is their given name, while the third part is their social factor, which that's what Eli figures, some kind of social factor. I don't remember if it specified what it was in Legends, I'm not sure. But that is kind of a neat way of doing it. And so, basically actually if they really wanted to make a core name out of Eli's name, it should have been Tavanti instead of Eli Vanto. Actually it'd be hard to convert because Eli is his given name while Vanto is his family name. So it would be hard. But we've seen this in Legends too, where the Chiss, where they've kind of meshed the names together and picked our code name based off of the syllabic structure of the name, of the non-Chiss. We've seen that before. And actually, so we learned about Chiss names a little more and how clearly they work in the canon. I don't know if there was any differences in legends, though. Though we get to learn more about Chiss Navigators, and their names are different too. They use tube parts. Of course, there's the most prominent navigator in the book is Navigator Varnaya. I believe I said that correct. I don't know. But they only have a two-part name. There's only one other Chiss character to have a two-part name, that being Admiral Aralani. And it's like, and we know the two parts and the parts because they're celebrated in the book by a what's the word I'm looking for? Why am I forgetting it? No, the thing apostrophe. They're separated by an apostrophe. So in our language, we would take that as some kind of break. Maybe something along the lines of a glottal stop. Think the uh-oh. That kind of break in the middle of uh-oh. That's a glottal stop. That's kind of how I've always interpreted it, either that or a pause of some form. Basically something to clearly separate. But navigators have only two names. I'm thinking the first part is their core name, or not the core name, but their given name, and the last part is that unknown social factor that Eli was speculating about. What that is, I don't know. And I think I figured out why there's no family name, because the fleet has become their family. And so I doubt it would be called like, Fleet Vanan, I can't even say your name, but Fleet and then their name. Or whatever the Chiss equivalent of fleet in their language would be. So that's my guess. It's the given name and that unknown social factor. And the fact that they don't have a family name signifies that they're navigators rather than anyone else, because their family is the fleet, which they talk about later on. And the other navigators, that's their family. I also would like to throw in some speculation that the second part, or the last part, may not necessarily be a social factor, but maybe something else, maybe not reflecting a place in society, but could be, reflecting both, like the day they were born, or something else. Because, like, if you look in Western society, we have a first, middle, and last name. The first name is always the given name, while the last name is always the family name, also known as a surname. And the middle name is normally very similar to the given name. Some people go by the middle name. And of course the origin of the practice of basically having three names, I think, goes back to early Christianity over in medieval Europe. And you still see this practice in Catholicism a lot. Actually, I would say medieval Catholicism might be better than early Christianity in talking about it. But basically, when you look at it, you'll see there's their family name, which is their last name. Then they'll have their given name, which is also known as their baptismal name. So the name they were given upon their baptism. Some may even have an additional given name in front of that. So they would have, their baptism name would be the mid name. But oftentimes in Catholic practices, there are those who get a confirmation name, which is an additional third or sometimes even fourth name. What I'm going to call it, there's one person who I think has their birth name, their baptismal name, and their confirmation name. It's like, that's a lot of names, plus their family name. Now, could there be something like that where there's they're given a name at birth, then there's their family name, and then at a later stage in their life they adopt a second name that reflects that last portion? I don't know, but it's something to think about. And maybe not the best place to throw in a review, but it's something I really thought about when I was reading this. And like, that could be some kind of like, social. So maybe what Eli's talking about, a social situation, or a social, indicates social position. So I think it's still social, but maybe not social position, but rather achieving a place in society might warrant that third name. And then that could be something they choose. I don't know. And maybe with the Navigators, maybe my speculation that they don't have a family name might be wrong. Maybe they just have a family name and their given name, as I'm calling it, and then they just don't get that social name. But I like to think of it the other way, that they drop their family name, because I think that fits in better how the fleet and the other Navigators become their family. They don't need a family name then to indicate that, is my guess, my speculation. And that leads me to want to talk a little about Admiral Aulani. She also only has a two-part name, though her name could, if you finagle the syllables, could be made into a three-part, but it's clearly said to be only a two-part name. So that makes me think of one or two things. One, she was a Navigator when she was a young child. No, generally they're like 5 to 10, I believe is like the age range for the chits, for prime age for Navigators, normally female also. The chits don't know why, either. Though, so maybe the Admiral was once a Navigator as well, and then she just, when she grew up, just joined the fleet and achieved a high rank. It seemed like the Eli was speculating was because she was a senior flag officer. I'm not so sure of that, in fact. Granted, I don't know if I'm right. That's just some speculation I have. And then there's also the Navigator I was talking about earlier, who's a prominent character, Navigator Varnaya. She's 22 years old, clearly stated in the book to be that old. And that's said to be old for a Navigator, because they start losing their abilities with third sight around the age of 12, I believe. So basically, if you haven't heard what third sight is, we learn a little about it in Thrawn, not too much. We learn most about it in Thrawn alliances. I think we might have gotten a hint that Navigators existed in Thrawn, it was a while. But we learn about them in Thrawn alliances. And so third sight is essentially allows Navigators to see through hyperspace in a sense. It's also known as the sight from the sight, the sight without. So it allows them to navigate just through hyperspace without the need of navicomputers. And given the dangers of the unknown regions and anomalous gravity stuff, it works. That's how they navigate. They don't need navicomputers. So it's a force power, though. It's clearly a force power because we know that Jedi can do it, or at least a former Jedi, because in Thrawn alliances, Darth Vader does use third sight to navigate the Chimera through hyperspace. Now, we learned a little about how it feels to go through, and there's a direct comparison between when Vader was doing it and when Varnaya was doing it. Vader's was jumpy, jerky. Varnaya was smooth, more like sailing on the ocean. So still maybe a bit wavy and unsettling, but not jerky. So that tells me something that there's a lot of also practice going into it, and maybe a bit of a gift for it. We also learn about something called second sight, which is known as the sight within. So certain navigators who have the ability of third sight, because all navigators do. A few select also have the ability of second sight, which allows them to basically share memories with another, normally navigator, but I suspect you could do it with a non-navigator as well, because it's very similar to we saw this in The Force Awakens with Kylo Ren, where he basically forced information out of Poe and tried but failed with Rey. Rey actually did the reverse to Kylo, basically getting information, thoughts, emotions out of them as if you've experienced them. So I think with the Chiss, it's even more like you experience them. You take the emotions, not just the memory of the emotions, and the memories, which I think is more what Kylo Ren can do. But it's that same idea. There's a Chiss, it's peaceful. It's not violent. It's not forcing. It's peaceful. I would say even serene a little bit. There is apparently a risk that if one Chiss who's gifted with second sight does it to another Chiss who's gifted with second sight, there's a danger that they could become lost in each other's minds and never get out. So before I go talking about the main part of the book, I do want to say at the end we do figure out what Eli's mission is in the Chiss. His mission is shifting through data about the Chiss Navigators themselves, their family, the Navigators, so anything about them and their family, genetics, all that, anything that can be codified and quantified. So basically very little qualitative data, maybe some, but basically if the Chiss could find a way to quantitative it, to make it into a hard number, they gave it to Eli to shift through and to look if there any correlations, patterns, because what's the word I'm looking for? Even the Chiss are not fully aware of what third sight entails. Like, why do only Chiss girls seem to have it? And why does someone like Navigator Vanaya have it even though she's in her 20s, when that ability has faded from most other Chiss Navigators? She's an anomaly, and I think probably the main reason why they even sought to do the study, because here's an anomaly, she's managed to hold on to it. Why? I think I have a theory on why. She might just have an above average force sensitivity and connectivity than the other Chiss. Like, perhaps if she was discovered by the Jedi, well, she would have been killed as an infant in Order 66, given her age, or very young, but say if, the Jedi, she could have probably been a Jedi, is my guess. Like, she has enough force powers. Does that make sense? We only had like 2-3 Chiss Jedi in Legends, so Chiss force sensitivity I think is still going to be like a rare thing, an anomaly among the species. But now, one thing is established as an anomaly, and now we get an anomaly of an anomaly, which I think makes for interesting, and I'm curious on where it goes. Navigator Vanaya is also the only person that Eli convinces to call him by his real name, Eli, oftentimes. And that's kind of interesting. Now, Admiral Aulani does typically call Eli Mantle. So, and I think the Navigator does as well, but the only one who really calls him by his first name, the only Chiss I remember seeing in the book to call him that. So, now I've talked a lot about the Chiss. I really have not talked about the plot of the book. So the plot of the book kicks off because Director Krennic wants to take funding away from Thrawn's Defender project to pump into Stardust, which is a project that's building the Death Star. And it's not being kept as well as secret as the Emperor would like. Yeah, even the rebels are already on the track, and Thrawn figured it out, another Grand Admiral figured out what's going on pretty much all by themselves. We actually saw Thrawn figure it out in Thrawn. So, another Grand Admiral who's not as gifted of an observer as Thrawn has also figured that out, and that is pretty impressive. And speaking of that other Grand Admiral, we don't find this out till the end, but he's the reason why this entire plot gets kicked into effect. So basically, he's using a bigger cousin as a Minox to make it look like ships are being mysteriously disappeared rather than being stolen by a bunch of pirates he's hired to steal components and all that were originally earmarked for the Death Star, but he's taking them because he doesn't support the Death Star. He's actually more supportive of Thrawn's defenders. Because he, like Thrawn, kind of know that the Death Star is not the best strategic use of resources. And like, we even saw that in Legends, Thrawn, he did not approve of the Death Star. He saw it as a waste of resources. I think he still does here, but he's a bit more passive about it. Not as vocal as I think he was in Legends, or implied to be in Legends. He's more like, yeah, okay. He essentially just wants his Defender program to succeed. And Director Krennic is of course threatening that, so Thrawn takes on basically a bet that if he doesn't get rid of the Minox cousins problem within a week, he loses that funding for the Defenders. He'll still probably have some, but not all of it. So he takes it, and he ends up, instead of, now he solves the problem by uncovering a criminal conspiracy by another Grand Admiral. And it's stated that there were only so many Grand Admirals in 12. I don't know if it was stated if that was required or just how many there were. But in Legends, it was required by law to only be 12 Grand Admirals, though it is suspected that Thrawn was promoted ahead of time by the Emperor but kept secret. But regardless, Thrawn basically does a lot more than he's asked. And he knows more about the Grisk. He discovers that they're a bigger threat than the Empire once thought. They were introduced in Thrawn alliances, and even Vader has to admit that the Grisks are a threat, though he more dismissed them as an immediate threat, but the Emperor could tell that Vader knew they would be a threat. Thrawn's more convinced now that they are a more immediate threat than anyone had previously thought, even the Chiss. Because it seems like the Grisk are preparing to infiltrate the Empire. And of course we know what's going to happen to the Empire, the Rebellion. We're introduced to Assistant Director Ronin, who's an assistant to Krennic. He's starting to wonder if the Grisk could potentially be, gaining control over the outer edges, the fringes of the Empire, and other distant elements of the Empire. Maybe. I don't think the Rebel Alliance has been affected, but that doesn't mean some other groups that are fighting the Empire haven't been. So, the Grisk are being presented as a real and dangerous threat. Now, will the Grisk appear in Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker? No. If anything, maybe a brief allusion, but they won't appear. You know why? Because I think they're going to be a threat for later on in the timeline. Because the Grisk can very easily take control of a society and control them in a way that probably even Sidious, as a Sith Lord, would be scared of. Sidious's ultimate plan in Legends is very reminiscent, I think, of what the Grisk's plan here is, basically to control everyone and everything, that even when you're not around, they'll die for you, even though they may despise you and want to rebel, but you don't, because they essentially control you. And it's scary, it's implied. We are introduced to a very young Chiss Navigator who was kidnapped by the Grisk, and has the memories of that and was pulled back from it, but because of Second Sight, Navigator Vanaya has those memories, and she asked Eli that, because they would be going into battle against the Grisk, that if the Grisk should be about to win, that he would kill her and the other Chiss Navigators, so not only that the Grisk wouldn't have the services, but they wouldn't have to live that lifestyle. Despite killing a Navigator being a capital crime in Chiss society. It's she basically asked a lot of him. And I suspect he probably would end up, and he does say how he would do it when Admiral Aralani asks after the fact, because she suspects that he was asked to do so. And of course he gives a very Chiss answer, of course, which impressed her. He got promoted to Lieutenant Commander, of course, probably not just because of that, but other things regarding fighting the Grisk. But that's just kind of the Grisk. They're dangerous, they're an unknown threat. In Legends we had the Yuuzhan Vong as the unknown threat, but I think the Grisk are a more nefarious threat. And I think that might be what we're going to see after the Skywalker Saga, once that story is going to be told. I think the Skywalker Saga is going to be focused on the light side versus the dark side. Palpatine, pretty much. He's the mastermind behind everything. But it's implied that even Sidious was concerned, it's actually pretty much stated that Sidious was concerned about the Grisk. That Vader was concerned and couldn't hide the fact that he was concerned. And then the new information Thrawn essentially revealed in this book to him at the end basically tells him that things are not as, there are dangers out there that even he's afraid of, because, if they took control of an entire fleet, that would not be good. A non-Gris controlled rebel alliance took down the Empire. Actually, maybe, yeah, I don't know. The First Order was in the unknown regions. Was the Grisks one of the threats that Snoke helped them overcome? I would say probably. But I don't think the Grisks are gone. The way they work as a client species, they can hide very well. It makes a scary threat. And I think one that could be worthy of a series of films. Probably won't get there yet. There'll probably be more storytelling first to build out and prepare for it. But I have a feeling it's coming. It's only a matter of time. And I think it's better than the Zhang, because they were cut off from the Force and therefore defied our logic. Which I think was good in Legends. Jedi can cut themselves off from the Force in canon. But the idea of the species is just so nefarious that they can just basically control an entire society with as few as a few dozen of them. That's scary, unsettling. It'd be like if Star Wars and Star Trek decided at some point to do a collaboration where the Borg are the invading the Star Wars galaxy. Existential dread and threat. Something we don't get too much in Star Wars, believe it or not. The existentialism. The existential threat and dread. We don't get that. A little bit when, the Sith are the most powerful and controlling others. But we generally just don't get that. And then comes in a Jedi to save the day. But here, the Jedi don't exist now. Either at this point and who knows after the Rise of Skywalker. We don't know. And I feel like Force sensitivity might be the only way to defeat them. But if they could get control of a Jedi... Wait, control. Basically, Abeloth. Combining Yuuzhan Vong and Abeloth, ooh man, that would make a dangerous threat. If you don't know what Abeloth is, I don't blame you. I barely know myself. But let's just say, extremely powerful and able to control the minds of a Jedi. And Sith. So, yeah. I'm getting kind of off track from Thrawn Treason, but all these things are popping up into my head about what the story could be entailing, where it could be going. The fact that there's a non-force sensitive species, to our knowledge, that has the ability basically to win over the hearts and minds of others and get them to do their bidding. One, you got that basically very dangerous threat like Zahn, compare with the control that we've only seen pretty much once in Star Wars, and that was with Abeloth in the Legacy of the Force book series, I believe it was called. Okay, can't get to those books right now, which I do have on my shelf. But yeah, the idea that, yeah, I'm seeing where this is going, and it could be big. But I think that's in after the Skywalker saga thing, because we gotta defeat Palpatine first. So, I probably got a lot of others I can say, so I think I'm going to end this discussion by talking more about Assistant Director Ronin. So basically, he's a subordinate of Krennic, and Krennic sends him there to basically make sure Thrawn takes over a week. Thrawn doesn't take over a week, by the way. So he's there, but over time he's starting to respect Thrawn, respect his ability of deduction and all of that. It's like, and when he learns about that there's a criminal conspiracy that's affecting the Stardust, the Death Star, rather than just, a bunch of basically giant space leeches, for lack of a better way of putting what the Mynak's cousins are. I think Grolok, as they're called, but that doesn't matter. Like, he becomes more and more respected as Thrawn. Still, he doesn't have any loyalty to Thrawn. By the end, he does take up Thrawn on the offer to go join the Chiss Ascendancy and help them fight and learn about the Grisk. how does Thrawn do this? Pretty clever. He suggests to Krennic and Grand Moff Tarkin to have Vader take over security of Stardust over the Death Star. Hence why he was the one going after the plans. Nice connectivity there. And Thrawn also deduced ahead of time that Ronin had, what's the word, just contempt for the Emperor himself. Like, the only person Ronin seemed to have any, lack of contempt for, basically actually their mind was Krennic, and admired Krennic. Even had a cape like Krennic. So, basically, Thrawn puts Assistant Director Ronin into a position where, if he stayed with Stardust, Darth Vader would figure out his contempt for the Emperor, which would be not good on his throat. But if he took up Thrawn on the offer and go help the Chiss, he's staying alive, and boom, he does that. Granted, he's also thinking the Thrawn and the Emperor are working on a secret ploy to hunt down and destroy any Jedi among the Chiss, which is laughable, of course. But I do kind of like that idea, in some way that he's thinking he's going to be doing one thing, and he's going to probably end up doing another, and become really invested in stopping the Grisk. That's my speculation, And that stuff. There was something else I was going to say. Yeah, I think I'll end with he was just an interesting character, Ronin. He really was, very similar to Krennic, a mini Krennic, if you will. But at the same time, I think he might have had a better, situational awareness than Krennic, if you will. More aware of the dangers of his position. Like, political dangers, not that. I feel like Krennic felt like he could always win. Ronin, I felt like saw Krennic could always win, but not himself. That's the impression that I got. And then, at the very end, in the epilogue, which I've talked about a little bit, but it's from the Emperor's point of view, because he questions Thrawn's loyalty. Thrawn says, of course, he's loyal. The Emperor doesn't push Thrawn too much, but he does, I think the word I'm looking for is, figure out that Thrawn does have loyalties divided in some form. Probably Thrawn wasn't pulled away in Rebels, something would come of that. But the Emperor decided that the Chiss would be a useful ally, with him leading both the Chiss and the Empire, of course. He's that greedy, of course. Always. Granted, he can't lead two governments at the same time. He did that during the Clone Wars, so. But with Thrawn gone, because he figured he could use Thrawn as his tool in order to gain control of the Chiss. Somehow. But the idea that the Emperor does realize the Chiss could be useful is smart on him, but his stupidity is that I don't think the Chiss will accept rule by an alien, even through a proxy, like, of some form like Thrawn. Plus, I don't think Thrawn would actually be maneuvered into betraying his own people like Palpatine thinks. Palpatine thinks he could. I don't think so. Thrawn's loyalties are clearly to the Chiss first and the Empire second, even though he states otherwise. So what I'm saying is, Thrawn's loyal to the Emperor as long as the Empire does not threaten the Chiss. But he also doesn't want the Chiss to gain control of Stardust. Probably because he knows, because it's stated a couple times, there's a lot of family tension in the Chiss. The different aristocratic families in the Ascendancy, there's tension between them that could spill apart and lead to conflict among the Chiss. It's even seen a little bit on the ship where the first officers of one family and guide all the members of his Chiss family, which is in a way extended family too. Not like family, but things like a clan. He gets all of them to pressure to support him, basically, in what he was pressuring for to occur. I don't remember which was to go find Amoralani because he felt she'd been away too long. But yeah, that was that tension between though. The Chiss I think was put in specifically so that we don't expect them in episode 9, because then we'll be thinking maybe what happened is that they fractured by then. And given that the fact that the First Order was out there, I guarantee you the Chiss are probably fractured. Much like the Mandalorians probably are too. So, that still doesn't mean we can't see one Chiss cruiser coming to assist in episode 9. We don't know. Okay, let's be realistic. The book was good. Yeah, I know. Hard transition though. My best transition ever. But yes, the book was excellent. I would, if you're somehow still here and you ignore my spoiler warnings, I encourage you to read the book if you haven't done so already. And that's actually really all I have for you today. Besides, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, as I said earlier, please leave a like. And also comment down below what you saw of the book. Especially now that I've given out my thoughts. I would like to use that as well if you've changed some of your opinions. This is, of course, a bit of a rambling video, so you probably, if you want a more concise video, just let me know. Maybe I'll pare it down somehow. But yeah, it was a good book overall. I thoroughly enjoyed it. For me, it was mostly with the secondary characters and the Grisks that I found enjoyment, not so much in Thrawn's story, because it's still his story, but his story arc. If that makes any sense. But yes, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.